As Shakespeare once said, welcome back to my channel. So the other day I was perusing my Google Drive and I came across my Cal folder, which contains all of the materials that I gathered throughout my glorious time in college. And I happened to stumble across this bioengineering exam that I took. Wait, there's something in my eye. Oh wait, they're just tears. And as I was looking over that bioengineering exam and feeling the overwhelming surge to cry out loud, I thought, hey, this would be a great idea for a YouTube video, to just go over the exam, show you guys what it looks like. Hopefully this will be helpful for those of you who are still deciding on the major and are curious to see what type of questions would actually appear on a bioengineering exam. And maybe this will also be helpful for those of you who have decided to major in bioengineering and want to prepare how many boxes of tissue you would like to buy in anticipation of the future that you may also cry when you take your exams. I'm totally kidding. I feel like that intro segment was a little bit existential. Fun fact, in high school, I actually gave like a 20-minute presentation on existentialism and how it affects the human condition, and it was extremely extra. The class of the exam that I'm going to be showing you today is actually a class that I really enjoyed, and I would say it's probably one of my favorite and most influential classes. It's a class on statistical thermodynamics within bioengineering. The title of the class, if I recall correctly, is Engineering Molecules 2, because it's the second part of the series of engineering molecules. So there's an engineering molecules 1 that for some reason I just didn't take, but I took this class in the first semester of my sophomore year in maybe 2017. It's been a while. Okay, one of the most gangster memories that I have of this class was when the professor proved the ideal gas law, so perv using statistical mechanics in front of the class on the chalkboard. And when we all saw PV equals nRT come up on the board after like 2 pages of math, the professor literally dropped his mic and then walked off the stage.
Boom, bam, bop, bada bop, boom, pow.
And this professor was so nice. I remember after I took this exam that I'm about to show you, I ran into him at the local bakery in Berkeley, Shanky, if any of you guys know, and he offered me half of his mooncake. I thought that was super nice. Get you a professor that offers you half of his mooncake. Okay, so a little bit more background on the actual exam. I actually took this exam and no, I do not remember what I got on it. Sorry to disappoint. But what I do remember about this exam is that I was late to it. And so the exam had 7 problems and you had an hour and a half to do those 7 problems. All right, so let's pull this bad boy up. Here we go. BioE 103 midterm exam.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
All right, so we know that the real first problem should be up here, which is out of the 3, circle the one that is your GSI. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and read the first question. I'm a really slow reader, so pardon me if, you beat me to it. But it says, several reactions and their delta G of the reaction for a particular organism are below. Glucose-P refers to glucose 6-phosphate, which is a glucose modified with the phosphate group. And below, they have all of these elementary reactions. First thing that I think, and then the second thing that I think is, okay, we have all of these reactions that for now we could sort of abstract. Like we don't need to know what they're saying right now until we get into the first part of the problem. But the first thing that I noticed is that for each of these elementary steps, they have their own delta G of the reaction. And each of these delta Gs have different signs. So I noticed that quickly right away, the first one is positive 42 and then the one below it is negative. And then another thing that I would want to pay attention to are the units of the delta G of the reaction. And so the units are reported in terms of kilojoules per mole. And that's important because say we need to work with these numbers in the problem, I want to make sure that all the numbers I'm working with are in the same correct units. Okay, so let's get into part A of question 1, which is out of 2 points. And so the first thing I think of is, hey, this portion of the problem is only 2 points. That must mean that the solution to this section should be easy money. Also too, this is the first problem, which is supposed to be the warm-up of the 7. So it's asking here, is the conversion of glucose glucose and fructose into sucrose in the absence of ATP spontaneous under this organism's physiological conditions? Why or why not? And physiological conditions because biology. That's why this is a bioengineering class and not just an engineering class. The devices that we build, they can't kill a person when they're implanted into them. Part A is asking about the conversion of glucose and fructose into sucrose. And so now we could look at these 4 elementary steps and determine which of these is part A referring to. And in this case, it would be referring to the very first one. And recall that when a question asks about spontaneity, it's referring to the delta G, so Gibbs free energy, or the delta S, or the change in entropy. The delta Gibbs of your reaction tells you the direction that your reaction will occur. So if you have a negative delta G, then it would be spontaneous in the forward direction. And if you have a positive delta G, then it would be spontaneous in the reverse direction. And so here they gave us that in the first reaction that we're interested in, the delta G of the reaction is positive 42 kilojoules per mole. So in other words, we're going to need an energy input in order for the reaction to occur. It would not be a spontaneous reaction because we have a positive delta G. According to the grading, it's all or nothing. So, if you try to write down it's not spontaneous with a little bit of spontaneity, no partial credit. Okay, I'm feeling pretty good about this exam. I think we got it in the bag. Okay, so moving on to part B, I noticed right away that this is out of 10 points. So I think we're gonna have to step it up a little bit for this part. In the body, the following reaction occurs to form sucrose. Calculate the delta G change of the reaction. Is this spontaneous? When I see this question, I see this other reaction that they gave me that is not part of the 4 up here. And so the first thing I think is I'm probably going to have to couple some reactions that they gave at the top to get this new equation that they introduced here. So you would use the first reaction that they gave as well as the very last reaction because it gives you both the reactants and products of your end reaction. What you're gonna have to do is just add them together, right? And so it should give you an overall of -8 kilojoules per mole. And because our overall delta Gibbs of this reaction is negative, you would say that the reaction is spontaneous. And for extra credit, you could write down here below that you subscribe to Megan's YouTube channel. All right, guys. Question 1 down. Let's move on to question 2 because we only got 90 minutes to solve this exam. Question 2 says that the standard Gibbs free energy of formation for a few compounds involved in ATP hydrolysis are listed below. ATP hydrolysis. That sounds familiar. So in part A, calculate the standard Gibbs of formation for the inorganic phosphate. You can refer to this famous equation, which is equal to the summation of the delta G of the products minus the sum of the delta G of the reactants. And so part A is basically testing again whether or not you know how to add. And so here we would place the -32 kilojoules per mole on the left-hand side because that was given to you, as well as add the other values. Okay, if you missed part A and you used your calculator, then maybe you entered the wrong buttons in your calculator. So part B is out of 8 points. I have ATP plus H2O leads to AMP and pyrophosphate has a delta G of the reaction of -45 kilojoules per mole. And this other reaction that I don't feel like reading has a delta G of the reaction of -29. What is the delta G formation of AMP? Okay, so the first thing that I think of when I see that there are 2 new equations that he introduced is that I'm probably going to need to couple them and that all values of each of the reactants and products are probably given to you except for the one that he's asking for. So AMP will be the unknown variable here. And so here you would again, similar to the previous question, is to couple the reaction. You would reference this equation for the overall delta Gibbs of the reaction and then plug in that -74 kilojoules per mole that we obtained from coupling those reactions on the left-hand side and then filling in all the other given values on the right-hand side, with AMP being the only variable that we do not know the value for. We can arrive at the final answer, which is -570 kilojoules per mole. All right, people of the internet, let's move on to question 3. And it is out of 12 points. Whoa, this is a big boy here. In terms of the partition coefficient Q, the internal energy U is defined as this complicated formula that I don't feel like reading at the moment. The entropy S is defined as some other complicated formula. And the Helmholtz free energy is defined as an easier formula to say, F equals U minus TS. Okay, so I think that this is a typo here, and I think this should actually say the partition function Q rather than the partition coefficient Q. I do remember that they are different things. Partition function is related to entropy, which is what we'll get to in a second. And partition coefficient is actually a different thing that refers to, I believe, the separability of two different solutions, and it's asking you to show that the pressure P is defined as negative partial derivative of F with respect to V while holding T and N constant is equal to this other complicated formula. Okay, for this one, let's step back for a minute before we even solve it and actually think about what is the purpose of this problem. And I think that the purpose of this problem is to know how different concepts in StatMech or thermodynamics relate to each other. And the best way for someone to demonstrate their knowledge of how these different concepts relate to each other is mathematically, right? Through equations. So entropy S is equal to K, L, and Q. So this is referring to this really important equation that I remember learning in this class, which is S is equal to K, Ln, W, where K is the Boltzmann's constant, Ln is the natural log, and W is the multiplicity. I think Boltzmann had this engraved on his tombstone. What's going to be engraved on my tombstone? Let's get nerdy. Back to entropy. This is such an important equation because it connects the macroscopic and microscopic worlds. S, which is entropy, is a macroscopic entity. W, which is multiplicity, represents the microscopic degrees of freedom of a system. Systems will move towards the state of maximum multiplicity. Okay, so how does this S equals K and W equation relate to the partition function Q? If you go through the math and use Stirling approximation, then you can rewrite the equation S equals K, L, and W in terms of probability. Let's solve the problem now, because we don't got time to be philosophical here. I would start out with, honestly, the most simple one, which is FU minus TS. So the first step here is to plug in the equation of S into the equation for the Helmholtz free energy. And then you simplify that equation. And I look at this other equation he gave me of pressure that has a partial derivative of F with respect to V. And so I think now, hey, why not take the derivative of both sides with respect to V? And so that happened. And hey, that's equal to P. Problem solved. And it says here that the biggest mistake was essentially saying that taking the partial derivative of U with respect to V while holding T constant is equal to 0. This is an assumption you cannot make, and credit was taken off if you made this error. Yeah, why would you do that? That's so irresponsible. Okay, moving on to question 4. It's out of 12 points. That's how you know we're not messing around anymore. A protein has 3 conformations, each corresponding to an energy level. There's one at a ground state, energy of 0, and the others at higher energy levels. Only the first energy level is enzymatically active. What fraction of the protein is going to be active at body temperature 310 kelvins? A system, or in this case, a protein, has many different states that it can exist in, some of them being more stable than others. And there is a probability associated with each of those states that tell you the chance that that system will exist in that state. This goes back to that beautiful equation that I referred to earlier, which can be rewritten after, lots of math and Stirling approximation in terms of a probability distribution. And that probability distribution demonstrates the probabilities associated with each of the states that the system can exist in. Systems will tend towards probability distributions that maximize the entropy. Okay, so in order to solve this problem, in my mind, I think there are 2 steps that I need to take. The first step is I need to find the partition function, and the second step is I need to use that partition function to find the probability of that first energy level. And how I remember partition function is the thing in the denominator. In this equation of the probability, there's a numerator and a denominator. The denominator of that probability is the partition function. And so to find the partition function in this problem, you're going to sum up each of the values corresponding to the states. So I'm going to substitute in the energy value as well as KT, right, which is the Boltzmann constant, and the temperature, which are given to you. And then summing up all of those values. And so now to find the actual probability that we're interested in, you're gonna take the single value in the partition function that is corresponding to the state we're interested in. So in this case, it would be the first energy level, and put that in the numerator, and that will give you the probability. and hence 0.3346 is the fraction of the protein that is going to be active at body temperature. How many times am I going to say partition function in this video? Probably too many to count. Okay, I just came back from using the bathroom. We all know that when you take exams in college, you don't have time to use the bathroom. Make sure to dehydrate yourself before every exam. Okay, moving on to question 5. A second protein, another protein? Bruh, can't you bring in another biological entity? Has an unknown number of conformations, but the energies of 2 conformations A and B are known, and so he gave you the 2 energies of the 2 conformations of the protein here. How many times more likely is the A conformation than the B conformation at body temperature 310 kelvins? So here, what you're gonna do is use that probability equation that we used in the previous problem and find the ratio of that probability of A to B. Here in this case, thankfully, the partition function Q cancels out, so we won't even have to calculate that. Then you're just gonna substitute all the values that they were given. All right, let's go to question 6. It reads, wow, this is a long one. Bruh, I can't read. A piece of double-stranded DNA, guys, we're moving to DNA now, is n base pairs long and held at a constant temperature in an aqueous solution. There are just so many words in this question. We'll assume each base pair has 2 states closed, where the bases are hydrogen bonded together at a ground state energy of 0 and open when the bases are separated with an energy greater than 0. The DNA only opens from one end sequentially. That's probably pretty important. I mean, right now, I don't really know why. Oh, look, they even have a nice little visual on the right here. I literally think that without this visual, I would not have understood this question. For simplicity's sake, we'll assume that all base pairings have the same energy, though in reality, CG pairings, 3 hydrogen bonds to have a higher energy than AT pairings, which have 2 hydrogen bonds. Yes. Okay, part A, out of 8 points. Oh, shit. Noting that some fraction is equal to a summation, show that the partition function Q for the DNA is this complicated thing. The DNA strand consists of n base pairs, and associated with each base pair is a partition function, right? Because each base pair has 2 different states, which is open or closed. Or in other words, the partition function is going to be the sum of microstates associated with each base pair, where the microstate is either open or closed. And here, the first term would be 1, right? Because the energy is 0, so that e to the 0 is going to turn into 1. And then the second term is just plugging in that energy value. So this is the partition function of each base pair. Each of the n base pairs are distinguishable. In other words, we can apply our AND operation or raise that partition function of one base pair to the power of n. So say, for example, that n is equal to 2. You can expand this partition function. Okay, so let's define the terms multiplicities and degeneracy real quick. Degeneracy, you know, someone who's a degenerate, like someone who hasn't subscribed to this YouTube channel. That did not land. I take that back. Don't unsubscribe. We can bring up the particle in a box analogy. A particle can have multiplicities that are degenerate. Or in other words, a particle can have different states that exist at the same energy. And in this problem, the coefficients in front of each term tells you how many of those states exist. But in this case, because we are only working with a sequential DNA sequence that opens from one end, then there are only one way that each of those energy states can exist. So we can just ignore each of those coefficients in front of the terms. Okay, so now we can represent this as a geometric series, right? Where you sum it from I equals 0 to n base pairs that we have. And then here you're just simplifying it to match the thing that he gave at the very top. All right, moving on to part B. Wow. 24 points. We're gonna have to activate a few more neurons now. So for every long piece of DNA, n is equal to infinity. Given that the internal energy of the system, which consists of a single piece of very long double-stranded DNA, internal energy is equal to this equation that looks familiar, must be equal to the average energy of the DNA. Show that the average number of open base pairs should be this thing down here. So here you're going to need the partition function that was found in part A of this problem, and then plug it in infinity and simplify this. So because e to the negative infinity is 0, you could just cancel that out. And referring back to that spicy equation that we discussed earlier, S is equal to K ln Q, we can take the natural log of this partition function, and then you're going to differentiate this with respect to temperature, plug that back in to the equation of total energy U that he gave in this problem, and then you're just going to simplify it. And because he's asking you for the average number of open base pairs, and the energy of an open base pair is sideways W, and we have the average total energy, all we have to do is divide that total energy U by sideways W, and we get the final answer. Guys, we're on question 7 now. We gotta hurry up because I'm actually gonna get a boba drink after I finish filming this video. Okay, so question 7 reads that there is a surface that can be represented as a lattice with n sites. A number m models can be arranged on the surface. What is the multiplicity W of the system? Okay, an analogy of this problem that doesn't refer to proteins or molecules or whatever is, in how many ways can you draw exactly 6 cards from a pack of 10? It would be 10 choose 6. And in the context of this problem, we have n lattice sites and m molecules. Do n choose m. It's not m factorial, it's m. Part B of this problem. Bro, how many parts of this question? Okay, there's only 3 parts. A fraction f of the molecules decay into a different molecule. What is the multiplicity of the system now? I don't know. You tell me. So here we would take f and multiply that fraction f by the number of molecules, so fm. And we also need to take into account the molecules that did not decay, which would be m minus fm, right? And we would replace the m factorial in the previous equation in part A with the factorial of each of the fractions that did or did not decay. And part C is saying, what is the entropy change for this decay process in terms of alphabetical letters? So when I read entropy change, I know that change means that I need to calculate the difference somewhere. And in this case, it would be calculating the difference in entropy between decaying and not decaying. We reference that spicy equation yet once again, S is equal to K, L, and W, where we can substitute W in for the multiplicities that we found in parts A and B. And so this is why the natural log in this equation is so convenient, because we can take the addition and subtraction operations of different systems very conveniently. And you can rearrange this using the natural log operations that we may or may not remember from high school. Alright guys, that concludes this video. That was actually a lot of fun. You know, I cried a little bit at the beginning. Let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed this type of video. I could definitely do this video again with other exams because, you know, that's why I went to college in the first place. So I can have content for my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching and toodles! M? It's M factorial. Oh.